Hello and welcome to this video about media exam questions predictions for 2023. So you want to look at what previous exam questions have been set up until this point. I'm now talking on the 18th of April 2023. So we're looking at this summer 2023 possibilities and what essay structures can be suggested for possible questions. Now, I have to tell you that the advice I'm going to give is a bit of a mixed bag. So it's not really an easy game to play. It's quite a dangerous game to play as well. But that said, there are some possible things to bear in mind that it's worth looking at, and there's definitely some useful information to be gleaned from looking at this. Okay, so if we look at the previous questions from the first time that they set the new specification, where they gave us some specimen like example papers or questions up to 2018, we can see some patterns there with quite a few questions with two topics within an individual question. So you can see there are 5 of those, and you can see that all the topics have been marked there, and I'll look at the patterns in general in a moment. Okay, so you can see all the topics there, and again we'll look at the patterns in a moment. From 2019 to 2022, again 4 exams set in that, and that was 4 exams set in that time period. So again, we can see 7 questions where there are 2 topics within an individual question. So again, this is something that's an increasing pattern, where they like to have a question where it might say something like, outline and explain 2 ways in which new media may be changing popular culture. So that's actually about the new media, which is topic 1, but it's also about topic 3, which is the media, globalization and popular culture. So you're actually being asked to apply knowledge from across the specification, from 2 areas of the specification there. So it really is important to be able to talk about things like the way in which the social media, apps like TikTok and so on, may be enabling the spreading of mainstream popular culture, is popular with the masses, even more widely, and that also might include a Western American form of culture, especially in the case of YouTube and so on, possibly. And that might be meaning that popular culture is becoming more and more kind of westernized and Americanized, possibly. So there's some possibilities. So the thing to bear in mind there is that, again, I'll look at the patterns of the topics in a moment, but they do like to set questions with 2 topics in an individual question. So you need to be able to link in and try and link in when you do that from across the specification. So if we look here on this slide, we can see that there are several patterns. So in the first kind of phase, from when they set the new specification, they weren't very keen on the new media, globalization and the news, okay? And they're a bit more keen on representations and audiences, pretty keen on that, and pretty keen on ownership and control. That hasn't changed a lot in the second phase, 2019 to 2022. They still like ownership and control. They still like audiences. There are more questions on new media, though, and there are more questions on globalization, significantly more. News is still got a couple of questions. It's not that popular as a topic. Representation, surprisingly, even less popular as a topic. You'd think, that's quite a common thing that people think about when we think of media. So that's quite interesting. The thing I would say, though, is that it's become even harder in more recent years to predict questions because they're just more broadly spread across the topics. And I think that making predictions is a dangerous game, but we can see that some topics are not assessed at this stage over 8 exam papers, we're not seeing some of those topics that are on the specification. So some possible things to say about the summer 2023 exam. It's very likely that there'll be questions where they have at least 2 topics across the specification within an individual question. And so that's likely to happen, in the families exam, and it's likely to happen in the media exam topic. I mean, this is in the same exam, families and the media in paper 2. There's no previous questions, as far as I can see, unless I'm missing something, on media representations of social class, and media representations of sexuality, and media representations of disability. And so I'm going to make a short video where I talk through possible ways of talking about those topics. But with media representations, you always got the same concepts of symbolic annihilation, media gaze, and you can bring in the theories like Glasgow, School, and Marxism, and so on. You've got a slight bias still across the board towards the ownership and control topic and the audiences topic, but the other topics are pretty much caught up or catching up. We need to be cautious, okay? The new media, globalization and news are newer and less popular topics. So we definitely can't say that these won't come up. They have come up in the past, a bit less often. There's no reason why they wouldn't come up again. So sorry if that's bad news, or if that seems like bad news. Secondly, the examiners may not set topics or questions on topics that haven't been previously included. Even though they've previously not been included, they may still exclude them. So sexuality may not ever come up, I suppose. There's no kind of demand on the examiners, pressure on them necessarily to include sexuality. Just because it hasn't been included previously doesn't mean it will come up in summer 2023. Previous topics may be reassessed in a reworded way. They've assessed on youth 2 or 3 times in previous years. They really like to ask about negative representations of youth, the representation of youth in the news in a negative way. They've done that a couple of times, so they may do that again. They may not ask about social class, even though it has been excluded. They may just keep on asking about youth if they do ask about representations. And that's probably because maybe it's just, I don't know why it's come up previously in the past, but it's possible that, it's just an easier one to answer a question about when it comes to moral panics, because it's more immediately relevant to the moral panic theory of Cohen, where it is about youth, and the class issue is a bit less clear for that. Talking about possible questions that shouldn't give us any certainty or confidence, and if it does, okay, you probably want to question yourself and think, why do I feel confident? Do I want to believe that these questions are going to come up? You've got to revise everything, okay, and don't be complacent, and don't just expect this to be like a magic formula. It's not, okay. It's just showing what the patterns are and some possibilities, but there's no kind of a level of certainty whatsoever. It's really difficult and dangerous to predict questions. Most topics are covered at some point. Most topics have been covered in the questions previously. There are some general patterns that we can see, but these appear to be changing in the second phase in the last 4 years. So again, we need to, be very careful there. I would revise everything so that you can think on your feet in that exam situation and you don't feel on the wrong foot or on the back foot when it comes to looking at the questions and the keywords that they use. One of the things that you can notice if you look at the wording of the questions, I'll just go back a bit, that they do like to word things in a particular way. And again, I haven't put the full question here. I've got a spreadsheet which has got the full wording of the question. And again, even that spreadsheet doesn't have the items in it, which again is another issue to consider, is making sure you can understand what's in the items they previously set. I mean, it's pretty clearly worded. If you understand what's in the textbook, you should understand what's in the item. If you've studied stuff in class, you should understand what's in the item. But the wording of the questions did throw some students off in 2022, where it said earlier media theories. And I remember quite a lot of fellow teachers said that their students would have been thrown by that because of the wording of early media theories. It's not a wording that's used in all the textbooks. It's referring to media theories like pluralism and Marxism, and those kind of early media theories dealing with the traditional or media, or also known as establishment or established media, or another word for the old media would be legacy media or old media. And they were referring to the kind of pre-digital technology, really, so television, print newspapers, and radio. So the new media, obviously, that is used in the textbook as a key term, and that refers to digital technology-based media. It refers to the interactive digital media, smartphones, social media, internet, online, virtual media, websites, apps, social media. But obviously, because students hadn't, in some cases, been acquainted with the term earlier media, when they saw early media theories, that really threw them. But it was really just talking about the theories like Marxism, pluralism. And the new media theories, you could say, would be talking about the theories about the new media. So we'd be talking about neophiliac theory, also known as cultural optimism, and cultural pessimism theory. And both of those perspectives are talking about new media, either in a good way or a bad way, either saying it's good for democracy and good for society, or it's bad for democracy and bad for society. So again, this is just an example, but the way in which they word the question, it's worth looking at the key terms used in the textbook and reading around the subject, reading documents and publications online like Media Watch and Novara Media. Just a range of those kinds of media outlets and platforms. Obviously, they have their own kind of bias and ideology and political perspective, so it's worth bearing that in mind as well, so that you don't think that all the media takes that perspective. So I hope this is helpful. I will make another video where I talk about the topics of media representations, topics that have not been covered as much previously in the exams, and look at the kind of concepts that we can use with those topics. But it will be the same as in other representations. Essays, it would be symbolic annihilation. It would be explaining that clearly using theories like neo-Marxism to explain that, critical theories, and it'd be using like the media gaze. So hopefully this will help.